Netflix used footage that Diddy calls stolen. His videographer says someone betrayed him, and 50 Cent won't say how he got it. This could change documentaries forever. Let's break down this entire mess. Part 1. The accusation. This is stolen. The day Netflix's Diddy documentary dropped, his publicist released a statement calling it a shameful hit piece, using stolen footage that was never authorized for release. Not questionable footage, not unauthorized footage. Stolen. Why stolen matters. That word changes everything, because if footage is truly stolen, we're not talking about ethics, we're talking about crimes. Whoever took it could face criminal charges. Netflix could be liable for using stolen property. The entire documentary could be built on illegally obtained evidence. And here's the explosive part. Some of this footage shows Diddy discussing legal strategy with his attorneys. Attorney-client privilege is supposed to be sacred in America. Those conversations are confidential. They can't be used against you in court. Diddy's team isn't just saying, "We're upset." They're saying Netflix violated one of the most fundamental principles in the legal system. And if they're right, this doesn't just affect Diddy. It affects every person who's ever spoken to a lawyer in confidence. The footage they're fighting over. So what's actually in this footage that's causing all this drama? We see Diddy at a New York hotel in September 2024, days before his arrest. We see him talking to his lawyers about the case. We see him discussing potential witnesses. We see him expressing concerns about the federal investigation. We see him in moments that were clearly meant to be private. This isn't paparazzi catching him at dinner. This is intimate, behind closed doors footage of a man dealing with the worst crisis of his life. And according to his team, it was filmed for his documentary, the one where he'd tell his side of the story on his terms. Instead, it ended up in his biggest enemy's hands. And why this is devastating. When you're facing criminal charges, controlling your narrative is everything. You carefully craft every statement. You never show weakness. You never reveal strategy. This footage shows all of that. It's like someone hacked your brain and broadcast your private thoughts to 21.8 million people. Diddy's lawyers would never have let him say these things publicly. And now they're in a Netflix documentary produced by 50 Cent, the man who's been trolling Diddy for 20 years. That's not just bad luck. According to Diddy's team, that's theft. Toujours you on Part 2, Netflix claps back. Legally obtained. When Diddy's team started throwing around the word stolen, Netflix didn't stay quiet. They released a statement that's fascinating because it's technically correct, but morally questionable. The statement. Here's what Netflix said. The claims being made about Sean Combs, The Reckoning, are false. The project has no ties to any past conversations between Sean Combs and Netflix. The footage of Combs leading up to his indictment and arrest were legally obtained. This is not a hit piece or an act of retribution. Curtis Jackson is an executive producer, but does not have creative control. No one was paid to participate. Let's break down what they're actually saying and what they're not saying. Legally obtained. This phrase is doing massive heavy lifting, because legally obtained doesn't mean Diddy consented. It doesn't mean he knew about it. It just means the person who gave it to Netflix had the legal right to do so. Think about it like this. If your roommate gives someone your diary, they had access to it. They technically could hand it over. But did you want them to? No. So Netflix's argument is basically, someone who had legitimate access gave us this footage. We did the paperwork. We're good. But that doesn't answer the question everyone's asking. Who gave it to them? And why? No past conversations with Diddy. This line is fascinating. The project has no ties to any past conversations between Sean Combs and Netflix. Why even include this? Because there were rumors, reports that Diddy himself had pitched a documentary to Netflix years ago, that he wanted to tell his own story. Netflix is saying, we didn't take his project and give it to his enemy, but the fact that they felt the need to clarify that tells us there was probably some conversation at some point. The director speaks. Director Alexandria Stapleton also released a statement. It came to us, We obtain the footage legally and have the necessary rights. Notice what she's not saying. She's not saying how it came to them. She's not saying who gave it to them, just that they have it legally. That's the response of someone who knows the real answer would be more controversial than helpful. The problem with their defense. Netflix's entire defense rests on one assumption, that getting footage legally is the same as getting it ethically. But we all know those aren't the same thing. Something can be perfectly legal and still be morally wrong. And in journalism, ethics matter just as much as legality, sometimes more. The question isn't just, can we use this? It's, should we use this? BETRAYAL. Part 3. The videographer's story. It wasn't me. Enter Michael Oberles, the man at the center of everything. He goes by Obes, and he describes himself as Sean Combs' documentarian. His role. For over 2 years, Oberles had unprecedented access to Diddy's life. He wasn't just a videographer hired for events. He was embedded. He traveled with Diddy. He filmed business meetings. He captured personal moments. He was there in September 2024 when all this controversial footage was shot. You don't get that level of access unless someone trusts you completely. You don't film someone discussing legal strategy with their lawyers unless you're part of the inner circle, which makes what happened next even more explosive. The betrayal claim. In December 2025, after the documentary dropped and Diddy's team started screaming stolen, Oberles released his own statement. For over 2 years, we have been working on a project profiling Sean Diddy Combs. The footage in question was not released by me or anyone authorized to handle Sean Combs' materials. It was by a third party who covered for me for 3 days while I was out of state. So according to Oberles, here's what happened. He was gone for 3 days. Someone covering for him had access to the footage. That person took it and gave it to Netflix and 50 Cent's team. The problems with this story. Let's be real. This raises more questions than it answers. Question 1. Who covers for a celebrity's personal videographer? That's not like covering someone's shift at Starbucks. This is someone with access to private files, sensitive footage, and presumably signed NDAs. Question 2. How did this person know exactly which footage to take? Because the footage in the documentary isn't random. It's the most damaging possible footage. That's not someone grabbing files at random. That's someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Question 3. Why won't Oberles name this person? He says a third party but won't say who. If this person really betrayed him and Diddy, why protect their identity? Question 4. Did Oberles really have nothing to do with this? Or is this a carefully crafted story to protect himself from legal liability while still getting credit for his work? The career calculation. Here's the thing about Oberles. His entire career is built on access to high-profile clients. If he's known as the guy who leaked private footage, he'll never work with a celebrity again. That's career suicide. So either he's telling the truth and is genuinely a victim of betrayal, or he's lying to save his career while secretly knowing exactly how this footage got out. Both are possible. Both are terrifying. You're what he's not saying. In his statement, Oberles says this had nothing to do with any fee dispute or contract issue. But why mention that at all unless there was a fee dispute or contract issue? That's like saying I didn't kill anyone when nobody accused you of murder. It makes you wonder what he's really saying. Part 4. The conspiracy theories. Who really did it? Okay, let's put on our detective hats. Someone gave this footage to Netflix. Let's walk through every possible suspect and their motive. Suspect number 1, the mystery third party. According to Oberles, this person covered for him for 3 days, had access to the files, and took the footage. Motive: money, revenge, ideology? We don't know because nobody will name them. Probability: high. This is the official story after all. But here's what's weird. Why would someone covering for 3 days have complete access to years of footage? That's a massive security failure. Suspect number 2, Oberles himself. Theory: Oberles is lying. He gave the footage to Netflix, got paid, whether money or career opportunities, and now he's claiming someone else did it to avoid legal consequences. Motive: money, career advancement, or genuine belief that the world needed to see this footage. Probability: medium. He has the most to gain and the most to lose. Evidence: 4. He had complete access. He knew what footage was most damaging. He's worked with major production companies before. Evidence against: his career would be over if the truth came out. That's a massive risk. Suspect number 3, someone in Diddy's legal team. This is the darkest theory. What if someone on Diddy's legal team saw the footage and decided he deserved what was coming? Motive: moral outrage, disagreement with Diddy's legal strategy, or wanting to distance themselves before everything collapsed. Probability: low. Lawyers risk disbarment for breaching client confidentiality. That's not just career ending, it's license ending. But it would explain how the footage got out and why it includes such legally sensitive material. Suspect number 4, 50 Cent's team. Theory: 50 Cent didn't just receive this footage. He actively sought it out. Maybe his people reached out to Diddy's camp. Maybe they offered money. Maybe they convinced someone that leaking the footage was the right thing to do. Motive: 50's been waiting for this moment for 20 years. This documentary is his revenge plot. Probability: medium-high. 50 has the resources, the motivation, and the history of going after Diddy. Evidence: 4. 50's been suspiciously quiet about how they got the footage. If the story were clean, he'd be bragging about it. Evidence against: Netflix says no one was paid to participate. But does that include paying for footage? Suspect number 5, a digital hack. Theory: someone hacked into wherever this footage was stored and took it digitally. Motive: ideology, journalism, or just chaos. Probability: low. If it were hacked, Netflix probably couldn't claim it was legally obtained. But it's 2025. Nothing is truly secure anymore. The real answer. Here's what we know for sure. Someone who had access to this footage decided it needed to be in Netflix's documentary. That person either did it for money, revenge, justice, or some combination of all three. And the fact that nobody will name them tells us the truth is probably more complicated and more controversial than any of these theories. Part 5. The legal gray area. Is this even legal? E-section title card. The law. Let's talk about the legal questions this raises, because they're huge. Question 1. Who owns the footage? In general, the person who films something owns the copyright. So technically, Oberlees might own the footage he shot. But if he was Diddy's employee filming for Diddy's project, doesn't Diddy have rights to it? This is a gray area in copyright law that could end up in court. Question 2. Is this actually privileged? Diddy's team says the footage contains attorney-client privileged communications. But here's the problem. Privilege typically requires confidentiality. If you're allowing someone to film your conversation with your lawyer, are you really keeping it confidential? Or have you waived privilege by allowing it to be documented? Courts have ruled both ways on this in different cases. It's not clear-cut. Question 3. Can Netflix be held liable? Let's say the footage was stolen. Can Netflix be sued for using it? Probably not if they obtained it in good faith from someone who claimed to have the rights. But if they knew or should have known it was stolen, that's different. The fact that they're being so careful with their language, legally obtained, necessary rights, suggests their lawyers have thought about this extensively. Question 4. Could there be criminal charges? If the footage was truly stolen, meaning taken without authorization with intent to deprive the owner, that's theft, potentially a felony depending on the value. But proving intent is hard, and if the person who took it had legitimate access, is it really theft? Or is it a contract violation? These are questions that might not be answered until someone actually files charges or a lawsuit. The precedent this sets. This case could change documentary filmmaking forever. Because right now, There are no clear rules about using footage that someone gives you from a celebrity's private archive. If courts rule in Diddy's favor, it could make documentarians much more cautious about using behind-the-scenes footage. But if courts rule in Netflix's favor, it could open the floodgates for more exposés using private footage obtained through leaks. Yigirm. Part 6. Why this matters beyond Diddy, 1700 to 1845. Let's zoom out. Why does this controversy matter beyond just Diddy's legal troubles? The privacy question. If celebrities know that anyone in their orbit could leak footage to a documentarian, how does that change their behavior? Do they stop documenting their lives? Do they become so paranoid about who has access to what that we lose valuable historical records? Do they require such aggressive NDAS that whistleblowers become impossible? The journalism ethics question. Should Netflix have used this footage? On one hand, it's newsworthy, it's relevant, it provides insight into a convicted offender's state of mind, and it serves the public interest. On the other hand, it was obtained under questionable circumstances, it potentially violates legal privilege, and it was produced by someone, 50 Cent, who has a documented grudge against the subject. Where's the line between investigative journalism and revenge porn? The 50 Cent factor. We can't ignore that this documentary was produced by someone who has spent 20 years trolling the subject. That colors everything. If this same documentary had been made by an impartial filmmaker, we might not be having this conversation. But 50 Cent's involvement makes it impossible to separate the journalism from the personal vendetta. The public doesn't care. Here's the brutal truth. With 21.8 million views in 6 days, the documentary was a massive hit. And most viewers don't care how Netflix got the footage. They care that it's compelling. They care that it exposes wrongdoing. They care that it's entertaining. The ethical questions? Those are for media critics and lawyers to debate. The average viewer just wants to watch. And maybe that's the most important takeaway. In the court of public opinion, if the subject is unsympathetic enough, the ends justify the means. Final thoughts. So here's where we are. Netflix has footage that Diddy calls stolen, that was allegedly taken by a mystery third party, that was legally obtained through means nobody will specify, and that could set precedent for documentary filmmaking for decades. Was it stolen? Legally, maybe not. Ethically, possibly. Effectively? Absolutely. Because whether or not the footage was taken illegally, it was definitely taken from Diddy's control and used against him in the most public way possible. His own footage, meant for his own story, became the weapon that destroyed him. That's not just documentary filmmaking. That's poetic justice or poetic revenge, depending on which side you're on. Drop a comment. Do you think Netflix was right to use this footage? Or did they cross a line? And if you want more breakdowns of the latest, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.